Hello, everyone, and welcome into another week of the USL show. We've got a ton to dig into off the pitch, on the pitch, but before we get to any of that, Ryan, how are we doing?
Yeah, doing well. I want to at least open the show and say, lol, Mets. Thank you for my Reds getting into the playoffs finally.
Yeah, no Kaler, but we're celebrating the Reds in his spirit today. Phil, hey, our team's doing way better than the Reds. How are you feeling as we get into it? You are muted also.
And here I was bragging about the pre-show being more unhinged, leading to a better show. We're not off to a good start in that respect, but happy obviously with the result today for the Cubs, and one down, one to go in the wild card. I am a little upset at Kaler not being here to gloat about the Reds. One of my favorite memes of the weekend was the 90 plus win Cubs and Brewers as Seth and Michael Cera from Superbad walking, and then the Reds as McLovin at 83 and 79. And I thought that was a very funny approach. That being said, it is fun when the NL Central teams thrive, and I hope we all beat each other up in the playoffs, and it should be fun. But no, other than that, doing good. Happy to be back.
Yeah, love to have you back. Well, before we get into the CBA and the increasingly likely possibility of a lockout, we should thank some patrons. And just a reminder, before we list the names, we will have the link in the podcast description, probably there on YouTube as well. If you want to support everything we're doing, maybe help us travel to more places, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hey, get your name on the list and we will read you. So join in with John Hunt, Frank Anthony, Christopher Cohn, John Fuller, Michael Fuchs, Joshua Duder, Noah Telford, Alberto Aguilar, Jeremy Churchman, Stephen Howard, Rian Nakara, Tim Knox, NF Reg 30, MOS, Kunal Patel, Olive the Hedgehog, Andrew Towsley, Madcap Peel, Ryan Smeltzer, Sandy Lester, William Lamb, Dylan Reed, Josh, then a couple newish ones here with Matt B, David Horn, and Luke Loudon. Thank you so much for the support. We genuinely appreciate it. Speaking of people who need some support, how about the USL players? We are getting to a point in the CBA negotiation where things are starting to feel a little bit troublesome. It is going to expire on December 31st of this year. The PA has started to put out statements basically saying that over the past 13 months and 25 different bargaining sessions, they've essentially made no headway. Then earlier this week, the PA also put out a statement saying, hey, you should just block the USL Championship on all social media as a way of saying, listen, these guys are not doing the right thing. The statement from the players pointed out that there's no mandate for employer-provided health insurance. Obviously, they're bringing a certain perspective to the table, but we've kind of shown over the years that we're a pro-labor podcast anyway. With all of that said, Phil, how about we get you in here with some thoughts on this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just state the obvious up front, which is USL has ambitions of having a first division league. And to not be able to come to some kind of agreement in the interim with your a players union that you ostensibly sort of backed in the beginning, to not be able to come to grips with something as simple as we will pay for healthcare, or actually not even pay for it, just provide it like any other employer. There's a level of seriousness that the USL needs to get to grips with, like, really quickly, if they want to play in Division 1 spaces and be taken as seriously as they expect to and compete with the likes of MLS, which their players union, as much as I think our fans like have said, hey, the MLSPA needs to be tougher with MLS and all that sort of stuff, they're not arguing about stuff like healthcare, and like they're arguing for, better minimum salaries and all these sorts of things. Like, and there's a, give and take with the owners there. I just think if USL doesn't get serious about getting a deal over the line soon, they risk being never taken seriously as an entity, like going forward at a major league level.
Ryan.
Yeah, and we've seen this from we've discussed this from other teams previously throughout the season. Loudon had their long standing issues. We've talked about Chattanooga's issues just with their field alone. Like this goes just beyond healthcare. Like the fact that Loudon didn't have functioning laundry or showers at their stadium is a pretty kind of sad state of affairs for a team who among others would want to have ambition to be in a top flight league within this country. And if the team if the league doesn't get to an agreement here with the players, any of that momentum they're trying to build towards 2027, 2028, when they have that D1 league or have that promotion and relegation, you kind of risk basically derailing things. And the fact that we're also going into a World Cup year in 2026, if you're just not operating as a league at that point because you're in a lockout, well, that's just not a serious look for USL and not a good look for the front offices here. And back what the players are asking for here and just provide them that level.
I mean, that's a great point you're making, Ryan, about this 2026 World Cup moment. And I'll get to the point about why this matters for the basic health of players. But the league, when you talk to anybody behind the scenes, really feels like this is the moment for American soccer. If you are putting yourself out there to fans when people are galvanized around the sport because it's coming here, that is going to be a growth opportunity for the USL. If you can get people who are loosely interested in soccer to feel engaged and come to stadiums, that's going to make a big difference. If the league season is delayed, truncated, what have you, because the teams just simply don't want to give the basic livable bare minimums to the players, I mean, come on, what are we doing? You, Phil, brought up the point. We're trying to be a D1 league. We're trying to pretend like we are up there with the big boys. You got to put up the money and support the people that make that happen, and that's the players. These are the guys that are traveling thousands of miles across America in really tough conditions. It is a difficult job to be a pro athlete in any lower league context, but the USL especially so. And the fact that the healthcare isn't guaranteed, players aren't getting breakfasts, so many things that I think everyone takes for granted when you think about pro sports, that just isn't there. We've come a long way. The first CBA was a great step, but for the USL to continue to grow as an entity, I think that the ownership side of things, the league side of things, needs to come to the table and realize what's at stake.
I'd love to know which owners are really holding the line here, because I guarantee there are owners within the league who this stuff may already be in place and is already being provided.
Well, I mean, I can tell you, there are certain clubs that have amenities that blow others out of the water. Yeah.
And so I think, like you said, this is work for the league to do, to basically tell the owners who are holding out, you need to get in line. There is no option here. Because if they think that they can carry into a D1 league stuff like not providing employer provided healthcare or provided team provided meals, certain travel accommodations, there is simply no way that they're going into a D1 situation with that. And even your D2 league, which is your premier product right now, it is your main attraction, for those not to be just taken for granted is pretty crazy. And I think the reality here is that the owners need to get serious. And it is ultimately what the players are asking for should be considered a bare minimum. They are not asking for anything crazy here.
There are still guys in League One who work second jobs, and that's pretty commonplace. I mean, I'm not going to come out here and bring specific numbers, but I think people would be shocked when they found out what are the salaries in League One, and even for many players in the championship. And that comes with the fact that you aren't having the healthcare, what have you. It just feels like this is a moment that kind of lays bare how much room there is to grow and improve for the USL. They have done an excellent job of controlling the narrative and marketing themselves, right? You are constantly getting these letters of intent with expansion cities. You are bringing up the deals you're making with media partners. You're getting the private equity investment last week. Even things like ProRail and D1, they were announced before there was really a plan in place. And I think that's still largely true. That is the USL at the headquarters level trying to say, look at us having our ducks in a row. This is the other side of things. So much of the infrastructure is still developing. So many of these players are put in difficult situations. When they are the product, it is an interesting moment of, can we back up all the bluster with something that's really going to matter and really make this a workable proposition for the player base going forward?
Yeah. I'm just so curious, like, what the communication out of the league office could possibly be about this, right? Like, in the wake of the USLPA saying there's been no movement made on these very basic building blocks, I just don't know what the league's position could possibly be, in a in a way that is has solid messaging and like a foundation of any sort of position that they can defend. This just feels like, if anything, like, it feels like they're trying to work the players into a position of just accepting whatever they get, and I just don't know how they can possibly spin that into something positive for the league. And if there's a work stoppage, which there will be if these conditions aren't met, like, I don't think any of these players are afraid of like taking a season off. And maybe the conditions are like even part of that, where it's like there's probably a lot of League One players who'd be like, yeah, they wouldn't like change shit for me, basically. So
Right.
I may as well,
when you're hardly making a livable salary in the first place.
Right.
Like, yes, it matters a lot if you lose that income stream, but if the upside is we sit out, we force the league to take action, and we meaningfully improve what we're getting, that feels like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And when you're talking about too, like, even the league minimum in the championship is, whatever that like 2,600 monthly number, I think, is what I saw. And it's like, that's very good. And that isn't a minimum salary. That's a minimum combined compensation monthly. And that can include like many different forms of compensation. And so many
teams are like housing included and everything. Right.
Sure. Which is like fine. And you can understand why the players would want more guaranteed actual money in the contracts. They're also pushing for year-long contracts versus these 10-month contracts that like are a league minimum standard of, we only have to cover the season. We don't have to cover the entire year. And I mean, thinking about jobs that include an off season, like teaching or something, it's typically not like, hey, we're paying you for the months you're working and then not paying you, right? Like, we just take your salary and divide it over the 12 versus so the idea that these teams are like, we get to cut you off in October or November 1st or whatever the cutoff is, and save those 2 months of your salary. Like, it's just not something that, again, it's like, are you a serious employer or are you not? And are you willing to do what you need to do to take care of your employees and the most public facing and most valuable members of your organization? Like, are you willing to take care of them on a basic level? And the answer for a serious sports league must be yes. Like, so.
Yeah, and we do have the good comment here from Michael Fuchs that seeing what clubs could fold together for a scab roster would be funny. I'm not going to deny that. Like, that actually would be funny.
MLS execs playing in USLT.
I do think, what does it mean for the USL as a league that can engage in the global transfer market if we've got a player strike? Like, if you're somebody who's going to come over from Europe, but wait, this league could just stop for 3 months at a time or 6 months at a time because they aren't getting paid and they don't have benefits. That feels impactful to me. Maybe I'm just being ignorant and a check is a check at the end of the day, but there are so many ramifications of what this means if the owners in the league don't come to the table when they need to. So we will move on from that dour note into something a little bit more exciting because the Jägermeister Cup final is this Saturday in Sacramento on Golazo Network. We've got Hartford traveling there. These teams have really kind of run the table throughout this tournament. Sacramento's given up 1 goal through their 6 games so far, which is kind of unbelievable. This feels like it's the moment where Hartford and the whole project that has come together for them this season can reach its pinnacle. How are we feeling about the matchup, Ryan? What are you looking forward to in this game?
Yeah, from Sacramento's perspective, it's in their first final since they were in the Open Cup final in 2022, but they're looking for their first silverware as a team since their inception in 2014, winning USL Pro, actually beating my Hammerheads in that playoffs there. But for Hartford's perspective, like this is their first chance at silverware, period. This is their first final that they've ever played in. And I'll say it in my article later on Friday, but this doesn't just feel like the accumulation of a journey that Hartford has been on this season. It feels like it's like the pinnacle of what Hartford as a club has gone through to get to this point as well. Like this is a team that has pretty much kind of wandered the wilderness since they've joined USL Championship and like hasn't produced much of anything on the field, but this is a tremendous opportunity to lift silverware, to have a successful season, and to honestly build upon that for two teams that should be hosting home playoff games once we get back to the regular season. So looking forward to seeing how this one plays out and discussing the ins and outs of it on the field ahead.
Yeah, I think we talked about it as like, Jägermeister, it'll be cool when someone who's not taking the season seriously wins it. And two teams who are very much in the running for eventually winning a USL championship, like final, them competing for it is very intriguing. And I think probably in terms of form, this is probably one of the best matchups that USL could have asked for, just given how well these teams are playing now. If this matchup had happened 3 months ago, you'd be like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if this is going to be any good. And now this is, I think USL has sort of accidentally gotten suddenly very marketable matchup. It's the two coasts like against each other. I think there's a real storyline, obviously, with just like Hartford and everything they've gone through to get where they're at and the form they're in. Sacramento, obviously, going through their changes and finding their feet now under this new coaching regime. I just think there's a lot to talk about with this, and I am loving the fact that it is a marquee matchup in the USL Cup final because I think this could be the thing that sort of elevates this competition from what it's been as sort of a happening in the background kind of thing to now, hey, this is the thing that is on.
Yeah, and I think the thing you want whenever you've got a cup final is a narrative on both sides. Like, what's the story you're telling when one of these teams takes home the trophy? For Sacramento, like, the whole reason they moved on from Mark Briggs last year was because they expect trophies. They are unique in the USL, probably in that fact that they really feel like they have a club that should be getting hardware regularly, and he couldn't do it, so enter Neil Collins. If he comes in literally the first competition where he could lift a trophy, he does the job. That is so meaningful to the project, and I think validates a lot of what Sacramento as a program has been driving towards. And on the Hartford side of things, like, they've really never won anything. They've barely made the playoffs. They've barely been competent. I think a lot of people expected that to change with Brendan Burke. Didn't come off initially. Now he's really got them coming together. That as a payoff for a fan base that has stayed committed through thick and thin would be awesome to see. And I know I've seen people like in the USL show Discord saying they're traveling, they've got an Airbnb. The fact that we've got away fans at this game rocks. So I think no matter who wins, there's really a story to tell about it. And the matchup is great too. Like, two teams that kind of play a similar back three shape, really quick, really vertical in the way that they attack. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be fireworks, but it's going to be a well-played match at a bare minimum.
And entering this game, you'll have Sacramento, who are unbeaten in their last 6 home games across all competitions. Hartford are unbeaten in their last 10 road games across all competitions as well. In the 2 previous matchups between Sacramento and Hartford, historically, you've seen Sacramento win both of them. But yeah, these are 2 teams who are carrying really good form from the venues they're currently going to be playing in. And I think it's going to be a very intriguing match. And honestly, if I had to try and pick kind of a side here, I do think it's going to be kind of a defensive struggle, and we're going to see under 2.5 goals.
It feels like the sort of game where if somebody scores early, it could really be fireworks. But otherwise, yeah, they're so defensively disciplined. The interesting thing with Sacramento is that they've had Jared Mazzola as their cup keeper in the Open and the Jägermeister Cup, even though Danny Vitiello probably is the best goalkeeper in the championship, give or take. And Mazzola, if you count all 8 games he's done in cups, has allowed 3 goals, shuts down Loudoun in the penalty shootout in the semifinal in Jaeger. He's been unreal. Meanwhile, Hartford was missing Siaha last weekend. I don't know if that was a card accumulation thing, so that could be just me talking out of my bottom. He feels like the player that's the attitude for Hartford. He really sets the tone, comes up with the big stops. It's going to be a game where the goalies matter for sure.
And one thing to at least consider for this is how much does Hartford having the week off this week versus Sacramento having the game against Orange County tomorrow kind of play a role? I'm sure Sacramento will rotate for that game against OC, but there'll still be some players who will undoubtedly play in both matches.
Hartford's schedule interesting as well. They're in Sacramento for Saturday's game. Then they play Oakland on Tuesday, so a very quick turnaround. Granted, pretty close by in Northern California, but that's a wrinkle for them. And you figure they're going to go with the best 11 in a cup final. But yeah, tough to balance for Brendan Burke, knowing that this team could go on and get a home playoff game in terms of their league form. Real quick, we did get
October 11th as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Right, yeah. Well, that's the other dumb wrinkle. These teams play again next weekend, which who would have thought that would have been a cup final, right?
That is just one of those scheduling things. I feel like it's one of those things, Ryan, you'll probably appreciate the fact, Football Manager, it feels like it always happens where it's you get drawn in the cup and then you inevitably play where it'll just be whatever random thing of Liverpool Brighton, and then it's your Liverpool Brighton in the league happens literally the next weekend, and it's is this all just a simulation? I don't know, maybe the simulation is expanding to the Jägermeister and the West is eating the Jägermeister into the simulation.
I've seen some Football Manager saves where someone has lined up what they've played Manchester City 5 times in a row, where it would be in a Champions League semifinal, 2 legs. They would play them in the league, and then I think that they would have a rescheduled league game, and then play them in another cup final again. So just weird stuff like that. But sorry, we should definitely tackle the question on the format for next year.
Well, Soccer Night in Detroit in the chat kind of answered it himself. Nothing set in stone. I have only heard loose rumors. Don't put this in the newspaper, but I have heard loosely it could be a single knockout. So get rid of the group stage and just go straight through, which for scheduling purposes does make sense, even though I personally adored having that much interleague play in the groups. But yeah, it is a tough thing to do if you're the USL at this stage.
I'd love right of first refusal for hosting going to the lower league team as well. And just always bringing the championship sides to the League One sides, if possible. And maybe that alleviates some of the, getting rid of the group stage. You're still providing a lot of championship sides traveling to League One sides and giving them that test in front of their fans and giving them that sort of marquee match at home that you can market. So anyways, just something that I think could be...
the problem was always everybody wants their 17 guaranteed home dates or whatever the number is. So the hosting rights become a little bit problematic in that regard. If you are switching up the format, I'm sure the suits at the league office have an answer for it, but will be interesting to see what shakes out on that front.
Why not go full Carabao and do a two-legged semifinal as well?
I just hope that we keep the no extra time thing. That's one of my favorite changes. All right, now that we have previewed that, let's circle back to some of the league action that happened over the past 7 days. We will start in the Super League, where Carolina Ascent kind of continued a losing streak and some surprising poor form, losing 3-4 against a pretty resilient Sporting Jacks team. This one has an Ashlyn Puerta first half hat trick, some errors on the Carolina side that we can dig into. But Ryan, the general vibe from this game for you?
Yeah, it's always interesting. And like we go back to talking about teams who have played each other back to back. Like this is the second match in a row that we've seen Sporting Jacks and Carolina play. But and after the 2-2 performance 2 weeks ago, to have these two teams meet again in this moment, and Sporting Jacks has started the year pretty okay. They're one of the highest scoring teams in the league right now. But for the defending champions of the regular season from last year to start the year so poorly is just kind of really unlike this team before. But if you're Sporting Jacks, you have to be encouraged with the 4-goal performance. But if you're looking at this from the Ascent side, like there's only one team in the league who's conceded more goals than them, and that's the team somehow currently in second with Dallas Trinity in 12. So like there is at least a lot of cause for, I guess, somewhat concern moving forward.
Yeah, Phil, more concerned about Carolina, more bullish on Jacksonville. Where are you landing here?
I will say that based on the conversations we had at the beginning of the season, I have to apologize to Sporting Jacks. I was not familiar with your game. And the 30-minute hat trick, crazy. And the finishing, like, superb. Just like not just a hat trick of tap-ins or anything like that. There's a banger in there, like some dribbling, passing, like all of it was on display. I think the concern that I have for Carolina is about how easy they've been to get at compared to last season. Like they just were basically impenetrable all last year, and they just have a bit of frailty about them this season that it's like, for other teams that are coming off of sort of maybe a hangover from like a really great season and start slow the following season. Okay. Like you can make sort of all kinds of excuses, and ultimately the frailty is just really what is standing out to me. And the fact that it just seems like the spine for Carolina is not as strong relative to the rest of the league as it was last year.
I think the thing that was frustrating watching this game was this midfield is all returning players, and they gave Jacksonville so much time to pick out passes on one side of things. And then they were so sloppy with the back passes, really didn't know what to do with pressure going the other way. And credit to Jacksonville for putting them in positions where they had to make those quick decisions and forcing them into those errors. But man, the Ascent were mistake-free for most of the 2024-2025 season. You think bringing the spine back, having Philip Poole in charge would mean we don't see this. To me, I think that speaks well of what Jacksonville is trying to do, really hitting the ground running. We shouldn't overlook the whole situation with Puerta, who obviously gets that hat trick within half an hour. She's 18 years old. She was so good for Florida State and so good for the US U20 women that Jacksonville just decided we're going to make her one of our first 2 signings and bring her in. That looks like a wise choice. I know we've seen pretty minimal movement up to the NWSL, but if she continues at this arc, like she's somebody who got an offer from Real Madrid when she was deciding whether or not to go to college. That's a big deal, and she's a big talent and showing it already.
Yeah. A big get for Jax for sure. And I think they should enjoy the time while it lasts, because she's destined for big things, it seems.
And even from Jack's perspective, from their first 5 games of the year, they've scored the opening goal in 4 of them, with the one game that they didn't score in being that one omitted game.
Huh. Wild. And I will say, shout out to Carolina, having resilience here. Mackenzie George coming off the bench at halftime was a big deal. And they had played a game on Wednesday, so clearly there was some rotation going on. it feels like when George gets going and Corbin is integrated with her, they're going to be okay. But I am worried about the defense to an extent. Speaking of Mackenzie George's old team, Brooklyn was in action on Sunday as well. Fell 1-2 against Fort Lauderdale United in what technically was Ali Rogers' first game as the manager after Tyrone Mears kind of becomes the sporting director of the whole program. Fort Lauderdale looking resilient. Feels like they are a threat in this league. I don't know. How are we feeling about United right now?
Currently unbeaten to start the year. They have 3 wins in a row, and I'm trying to go back through. Oh, yeah, this is 3 wins in a row for the first time since December 2024. So the end of last season's first half of the year. Or they're one of 3 teams still unbeaten left within the league right now. It certainly seems like they're picking up kind of what we thought Carolina was going to be entering this year. They're kind of picking up where they left off from last season.
Yeah, I think it's been really strong. In this particular game, the player that just stood out to me, obviously scores a banger of a free kick, but Stella Niemeki, like, I thought she was just like running the show in midfield for Fort Lauderdale. She's involved in the second goal. I think she plays the pass before the hockey assist that sort of unlocks the defense for
She takes the ball away, finds Nabet, and then it's that unreal through.
Yeah. And so I think when you've got a player that is capable of this sort of just like taking over games like this, it is like, that's the sort of thing that can make the difference between a team being top and sort of just a playoff team. And yeah, it does seem like Fort Lauderdale's got the ingredients. I know Brooklyn is like Brooklyn is Brooklyn, and it's just like,
yeah,
and they're just like, there's a lot happening at all times. And honestly, the way that Brooklyn played in this game was not terrible. Like, they were in it. Yeah. They fought back. Obviously, it wasn't enough in the end, but I think this was a good result for Fort Lauderdale. I think it cements the fact that they are, if not, if I think we're still a little bit away from saying who is sort of the class of the league. But Fort Lauderdale is going to be in the conversation, I think, on the evidence of the opening to the season.
Yeah, and we got the comment from John Fuller about Lexington and Fort Lauderdale. I tend to agree there. Lexington might just be a cut above after what they did to Dallas, but in the context of Fort Lauderdale, I thought they were impressive in this one in the way that they responded to the pressure from Brooklyn. It almost feels like a cheat code that you can just lump the ball forward towards Locklear and Van Treek on the right side, and then you've got Niemeki roaming underneath them, picking up second balls, doing her thing. It wasn't as pretty and fluid as we've seen from United at times, but it was still almost equally effective. That's a big deal to have that level of versatility within your system. Feeling pretty good about their chances going forward. All right, with that, let's move into League One, where another team whose chances I'm feeling pretty good about are Union Omaha, who went to Chattanooga, got a 3-0 victory over the Red Wolves. That's a crazy result over a Chattanooga team that had been killing the game in League One. Ryan, in your column, you noted that Chattanooga has not beaten Omaha at home since October of 2022. What did you think about this result?
Yeah, I mean, this is a Chattanooga team who it's still like just baffling to see them atop the league right now. And especially crucially, it like keeps them still within touching distance of all the 3 other teams who have qualified for the playoff spot thus far. But for Chattanooga's, I believe, 14-game unbeaten run in the league to come to an end in such fashion that an Omaha team who's put in quite a resurgence as of late to not only climb themselves out of the cellar, but into a playoff spot and are looking like a very dangerous team that you do not want to draw in the first round. Yeah, this was a rather shocking result. And I'm trying to go back through and find like the last time Chattanooga had such a scoreline was against Lexington to end last season in October 2024.
Yeah, this feels like, I don't know, on both cases, it sort of feels like regression to the mean, if that makes sense, where it's like Chattanooga, I think, is flying a bit higher than what their like obviously it's a results-based business, all that sort of stuff. And I think that their position in the table is sort of inflated from where they probably should be. That being said, they've gotten the results, fair enough. And Omaha is finally showing us like what they are capable of. This is a very, very talented team. We knew this all along. They obviously went through a lot of change, and it's just all kind of clicking now. And when this Omaha team is clicking, I think we saw it in the way that they were able to move this Red Wolves team around in a like laterally, because the first couple of goals like all come from spreading the play out wide and then quickly playing a ball in behind. And it's like the way that they were able to catch Red Wolves out in that way specifically is something that other teams just haven't been able to figure out. And the fact that they were able to, unpick this Red Wolves team, which has been so stubborn, is, I think, evidence that this Omaha team is finally hitting their stride in a way that the rest of the league should probably be concerned about.
I think the thing that impressed me the most was Vincenzo Candela came in with a tactical strategy that was so tailor-made to break the Red Wolves down that nobody else had cracked this season. Like, it was kind of unbelievable. Attacking wise, they basically moved into a 2-3-5, which we haven't seen a lot of from Omaha. And that left side combination with Charlie Ostrom at wingback, Stefano Pino kind of roaming in the half space, and crucially Ryan Becher as this number 8 between them. That 3-man combination felt like they never turned the ball over, felt like they were finding those crossing angles. And then because you've essentially got 5 forward players, there's always that presence in the box. Now, obviously, it's harder to execute than just throwing the numbers onto the page, and Omaha deserves credit for that. But it was such a well-conceived tactical idea. And both of those first goals come from service from the left side, whether it's forcing the own goal or setting up that unreal one from Sergio Orsa Navarro, where he takes that kind of flipped touch and just hammers it home.
Crazy.
Defensively, too, Omaha really narrowed out, and they kind of dropped Prosper Kasima line into the midfield because the Red Wolves are very good at winning second balls and then just dominating territory. Omaha didn't really let them do it. In every sense, it felt like they understood where they needed to be, how they were supposed to align. You got to be feeling like this could be a genuine title threat, which I don't think anybody would have thought about Union Omaha a couple months ago.
They were. I think they were bottom the last time I was on the show, and that was like 2 weeks ago. So it's crazy the turnaround, and how quickly fortunes can change in League One. We know that, we know this is true. And I don't know that there's a team that you'd want to play less right now in League One.
I mean, if you're currently looking at the table, you have Portland in 5th, Omaha in 6th, and Tormenta in 7th. In fact, Portland and Omaha do play each other tomorrow, which will go a long way at either bringing Omaha closer into the race for the home playoff advantage, or would finally get Portland into the top 4, and they could possibly even stay there. I know Portland's had their games in hand, but if you're looking at those 3 teams and you're currently Knoxville, Naples, and Spokane, those are sides I would not want to draw in the first round just based off of form.
That's really the interesting thing with League One right now is the table is what it is. Teams have done the dirty work early in the season to get where they are. Form-wise, this could be such a messy postseason.
And midweek, Union Omaha v. Portland. In Portland, I'm assuming?
No, actually in Omaha. It's actually
it's in Omaha?
Noon.
I guess because Omaha didn't have games.
Wait, at noon? We're doing day games?
Noon local.
Okay, because I was about I was about to drag Locomotive about their Wednesday noon kickoff against Roots tomorrow or whatever.
Look at Loudon starting trends, man. Loudon starts this noon shenanigans, then Birmingham does it. Now we've got 2 of them this week.
Yeah, noon.
We had the USL
so it's a 2 p.m.
final.
Yeah, the USL final. That's right.
Locomotive's game tomorrow is going to compete with playoff baseball. What are you like? They're going to be playing in a baseball stadium during playoff baseball. Anyways, sorry.
Everyone involved in scheduling these things during the middle of the workday needs to like look in the mirror.
Yeah.
It made me
And
think
I
of
know
the
it's like get the kids in the stadium or whatever, but come on.
well, we had the
It's also
Forward
the
Madison
school day.
Blue Sky
Like
account.
Yeah, right, yeah.
it's also the middle of the school day. Like it's not the summer. I
Field trip.
don't know. It
Yeah,
makes no. Yeah, I do think that is the only thing that makes sense is they must have made deals with local schools to show up. Like there just can't. There simply can't be. And if that's not what's happening,
They just decided Wednesday at noon is the time.
yeah, like there's no way. So, anyways, God, because I was about to say that Portland Omaha is like must watch TV. Like midweek Omaha Portland is an unbelievable matchup, which it still is, and no one's gonna be able to watch it. So anyways.
hopefully the audience of school children there will appreciate the just like majesty of that matchup of what they're seeing.
It's like it's budget season at work, and so I'm gonna watch I'm gonna watch Locomotive and Roots toil at 2 p.m. Eastern time while I'm also fighting for an additional labor budget. What are we talking about?
Hey, well, speaking of a team that's fighting for an additional playoff spot, we've got the Greenville Triumph going to Spokane and getting a hugely impressive 1-0 victory. Greenville has been up and down in terms of the form. They are experimenting with a new shape as of late, and it's really changing the season for them. Do we think, based on this result, that Greenville can do it and get back in there?
I mean, they're just 4 points back of a playoff spot at the moment with a Charlotte Independence team who, like, frankly, if we just cut the playoffs to a top 7, I feel like those are like the 7 deserving teams to be in the postseason right now. And like the 8th spot it's going to be really interesting which team kind of just like backwards falls their way into it, almost in a Cincinnati Reds-esque way of qualifying for this postseason as well. But Greenville does have back-to-back wins right now, and you're looking at an AV Alta team who in front of them who haven't won in 12 games. Charlotte has been struggling as well, so it's not out of the question that Greenville could find their way into the postseason.
I didn't realize Alta was 12 winless. That's crazy. But more on point here, Phil. How is this affecting how you're thinking about Spokane and Greenville?
Yeah. I mean, Spokane, there was a huh?
Oh, I said if at all.
Oh yeah, no, I Spokane is one of those teams that I think they've ridden this roller coaster this season of at times they are like absolutely irresistible. At times I would say they probably deserved something here. And it's more of a credit to Greenville for stopping them and getting out of there with the win than it is necessarily to like Spokane for not like they created plenty. They had chances. They probably deserve something from this game. So I don't think it necessarily changes how I think about Spokane in that they are still a very high quality team. They have plenty of weapons, and there will be plenty of 1-0 deficits that they overcome the remainder of the season if they even face those. But I do think that this is more so credit to Greenville, and I think the level of fight that they showed in this one just suggests that there is a level to go up maybe for this Greenville team, and the fact that they can hang with the big boys, get a tough result on the road. If they can find a way to and just make up this gap, fight their way into the playoffs, this result kind of shows that anything is then possible for Greenville, because if you can win in Spokane, you can probably get results most places. And anywhere they would have to go on the road is not going to be tougher than Spokane.
I think the thing that's so promising with what we're seeing from Greenville in this new system is the ability to get really defensive, like we saw against the Velocity, or become more of an expressive counterattacking team like they did against Madison. The fact that they're using Siobhan Marsh, who's a proper forward, and Zeke Soto, who's kind of the same thing, as their wingbacks, and they're getting this level of organization is really impressive. And they did benefit in the Spokane match because David Garcia has to go off early, and he's such a tone setter from the back. But even then, he was barely feeling involved before that point because the front end of the press with Evan Lee as this roving, destroying number 10 was doing such a good job. Even in their box, though, I thought Greenville was impressive. Devin Benton, especially, who has come and stepped up to the plate, given that Zane Bubb went out injured. Benton has been unreal and a game changer for this team. So, yeah, just impressed from top to bottom for Greenville. I think Spokane, despite the form that we've seen as of late, they've got the formula. They didn't have Waldeck in this one on top of the Garcia thing. I'm going to still feel like they're probably the prohibitive favorite, pending Omaha's form as we kind of get into the last couple weeks here.
What will be interesting is if going back to your point about having this Greenville team being able to win anywhere, their final 4 games of the year is at Chattanooga, then hosting Omaha and Tormenta back-to-back, and then at Knoxville as well. Like, that's going to be proof that if they can qualify for the playoffs going through those 4 teams, they could take on pretty much anyone in the field.
And I mean, we've seen them beat those sorts of teams before. And I think that's what's so frustrating is just that bit of inconsistency for a club that has a higher level in their back pocket. Yeah, well, let's pivot over to the championship then. And one of the most inconsistent teams in the championship, Rhode Island FC, goes down to your boys at Southwest University Parkville, draws them 2-2 in a game that I found to be very sloppy on both sides. So love to get your take there.
Yeah, it was. I think there is something just a little bit busted about what El Paso is trying to do right now. It's all, they've really struggled to find the right balance of personnel with the inavailability of like a single player. And I think it just shows how the lack of depth is really starting to show, like, as the season wears on. They don't really have.
A fan of Calvillo, false 9.
It's so funny because we at Seriously Loco have railed about Eric Calvillo getting the ball in more advanced positions. And there is such a thing as overdoing it. Like we were talking about like the number, 8, maybe even a 10-ish area, not necessarily as a striker. And so, yeah, I think what's been a little bit concerning is they play Andy Cabrera in this one. I don't think he's fit. I don't think he should be playing, like, if I'm being completely honest, because it's clear that he's not able to get as involved in the games. I think he probably has one of his like least impactful performances probably of the entire season. And I think it's quite obvious that he's been rushed back from injury. This is amongst Amano Moreno's like form has fallen off a cliff. Just this season, he hasn't been the player that he was the previous 2. Christian Sordo's been better, but not hasn't been able to like increase the production. And so the team essentially becomes the Gabby Torres show, like where it's like, if Gabby Torres is going to drag them to victory, then that's what's going to happen. And if not, then there is kind of nobody else to do it. And what I found really interesting is that Rhode Island essentially, they didn't have to do that much to create moments of very high danger. And they also didn't have to do that much to limit what Locomotive was doing. That being said, they still pay the price. Like, Rhode Island still pays the price, basically because of like a complete fluke goal. And I mean, what a finish from Clay Holstad, unfortunately at the wrong end. And I think this was a game that, there was, both teams knew that, I think Locomotive for me comes out of this one with a lot less credit than Rhode Island. I think Rhode Island had a plan, executed it, and Rhode Island's sloppiness that they've shown at times this season ultimately is their undoing, where it's like a minute mistake in a moment Whereas I don't think anything about Locomotive's game plan suggested that a win was ever possible, where Rhode Island's game plan was at least strong enough to win the game, and it was the mistakes that were their ultimate undoing.
And I think the thing that was interesting on Rhode Island's side was the Clay Holstead experience across this match. He, for my money, is not a wingback, and he's played that position all year long, but he is best as a number 8. And against a team like El Paso, where you know their whole thing is the wide players, and it's Gabby Torres swooping up that side and targeting that exact position, it was a tall task for Holstead to have to come up with that responsibility. And in the first half especially, I thought he really struggled. And so Connor Smith, to his credit, switches the wide defenders at a halftime to try to give him more support. Like, you get Frank Nodarce on that side. It feels more stable, and then Holstead scores that horrible own goal. Really tough to see for him personally.
Yeah.
I think Rhode Island, it feels like it's lost points for them. And we're going to get into Indy in a second. But to have the 11 in this form and then to not get a win in El Paso, that's a really tough situation.
Yeah, I mean, both conferences kind of just playoff pictures right now is extremely close. And like we've talked about within League One, how much form matters to get into the playoffs. But like, you're looking at a Rhode Island team who, like, if they win their next match, they could go up to 7th in the Eastern Conference. And if you're looking at an El Paso team, like, they could drop down to 9th in terms of other results, just for how close together some of these teams are.
Well, in the real jeopardy here for El Paso, and I think just to draw like the finer point under like just how bad it's gotten and like why I'm being such a pessimist or whatever, they are now winless in 5. They have 3 wins.
2024,
which
Yeah,
they got a way to go before they match up. But since June 7th, they've won 3 times. And like they, I think I was likely on this very show talking about the fact that like, hey, summer is often rough for El Paso. It's always been like tough when you get to the dog days, especially when we carry these small rosters and all this sort of stuff. It has proven to be like, it's been brutal. And the thing about the reason that it is such a problem that like the game plan, the personnel, just, it never really feels solid. It doesn't feel like there is a real game-winning plan available. Their games to close out the season all carry extreme playoff jeopardy. So they play Roots lunchtime tomorrow. They play Orange County, on Saturday, and then Lexington, Tulsa, San Antonio. Like, there is not a game in there that doesn't carry some sort of Western Conference playoff implications, and they are coming into this in the worst possible form, right? So it is just like, this is a cocktail for very embarrassingly turning like second in the West into missing the playoffs. And that is very, very possible right now. Like, all of these games are losable for El Paso in the current form if something drastic doesn't change.
It's a lad situation. The West Coast.
This is a lad situation, but maybe the worst version of lads ever. Because at least the other seasons they missed the playoffs, they sucked the whole time.
Sure.
This they actually got some results at the beginning of the season and might somehow finish. Like, they are below Lexington right now, which is just like, I know that there is a decent chunk of the West that is below Lexington. And there was a point in the season where saying that out loud didn't necessarily seem like something that would happen. And yeah, now we're looking at a very real possibility where Locomotive ends up on the outside looking in these last 5 games.
I think the thing that makes me feel better if I were a Locomotive fan is that, like, if you watch Phoenix Rising play, they're liable to just give up 4 goals just because. Colorado Springs can't keep it together and suddenly can't finish. Orange County is always injured. it's kind of a race to the bottom in a way, and maybe El Paso wins that race. Like, given what we've seen, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, it's messy for sure. Other side of the conference, top end, Tulsa losing momentum and Sacramento not quite keeping up the pace. We talked Sacramento a little bit, but Tulsa fresh off of a loss in Indianapolis against the team that I am claiming as my 11 once again, just because they're winning games and I'm having fun. Sean McCauley switching into this, what was a 4-4-2 diamond against Tulsa, and saying kind of what Omaha did, frankly. We're going to be very narrow in these restart situations against a direct team. But then when we get the ball, we're going to be expansive. And Aiden Quinn almost playing like a left winger and looking amazing in the act. Things you love to see if you're me. The 11 get a set piece goal early. Jack Blake comes up big in the second half, and that's all she wrote for this. Is Indy gonna go on and make the playoffs? And do we think Tulsa is safe in the West? A lot of storylines coming out of here, so I'd love to get some thoughts.
Aiden Quinn assisting Jack Blake in 2025. Like, I mean, these are the dreams. These are the dreams of the 2021 All-Star team from USL. Indy remain, like, despite the fact that they are playing well, they just remain an enigma to me, because it's like, where has all of this been? And it just makes me wary of the fact that it feels like it all could vanish in a second, because it also, yes, like, could it disappear as quickly as it appeared, right? Like, that's essentially my concern, is how sustainable is it? From the Tulsa perspective, I don't know that I am, and maybe this is just the locomotive fan of me, of being like, well, no one's going to meme harder than us. So like, I just think I would be surprised given how this Tulsa team has played. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility that they sputter a little bit, and just given how high flying they were for so long, that they have some like rough results going into the playoffs, and maybe that even leads to, falling apart in the playoffs. It could happen. We've seen it before. And I don't think they're going to collapse hard enough to like be in trouble in the West. Like, I do think that they'll probably still play a home playoff game, and they may even still get, one of the top 2 seeds. Like, if it gets like a little bit rough here.
And we're far enough along that it would be a kind of an unmitigated disaster if they dropped below the 2 seed at this point, which is a credit to Luke Spencer for getting the work done early, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at it from Indy 11's perspective, like, it's been like just kind of one of those, like, where's this team been from, like Phil had said. But looking ahead for their next 4 games, they play Louisville, which fortunately for you, John, Louisville cannot clinch the shield against Indy 11 in that match. But ahead of that, you have Pittsburgh, Loudoun, and Orange County. Like, those are 3 teams who aren't going to let up for anything, for any reason. Like, they'll still have a reason to play for this. There's not going to be a team that's going to be on the beach, if you will, at some point. Whereas if you're looking at this from Tulsa's perspective, like, yeah, looking ahead, they'll have Lexington, San Antonio, El Paso, Colorado Springs. The one thing I do have a little bit of concern is, like, you're looking at Sacramento, that they finished the year hosting Miami, who will be like very much the wooden spoon candidate once again. Like, it's not like a foregone conclusion that Sacramento, with a game in hand over Tulsa, could come in and pip them to the first seed in the Western Conference right now, especially if they have what is going to be, quote unquote, a layup of a final game of the year. So, like, yeah, with Tulsa having just 1 win in their last 5 games, and Sacramento, depending on how the scheduling just kind of works out post their final on Saturday, yeah, it's not out of the question that Republic could catch them up. And, like, even New Mexico, just 7 points back, could still catch up to Tulsa as well. So, like, they could finish below those top 2 seeds.
Crazy to think about. And New Mexico, a team that I'm not going to say I had written off, but I was feeling pretty doubtful about. They go and have a 6-point week, and suddenly, like, they could be a dark horse number 1 seed. Crazy how tight this league is across the board. So yeah,
Remind me the situation too with Tulsa's keeper, because Cole Johnson gets his like first start, and I will say for the first goal for Indy, it's a bit of a howler.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like flapping on the set piece. So I think there's because it's Siaha, right? Like who they were missing.
Penuranda's the guy usually.
Peñaranda. Sorry, I was who was missing Siaha, because he was also
Hartford
out.
was missing Siaha.
Hartford was missing Siaha.
And then
That's
John Burner had the game of his life. Like he was stopping everything. Yeah.
And then and I would say too, like Indy defensively in this one, because I think Tulsa still managed something like 12 shots on target, which is like and I think 14 of their 19 shots or something like that were from inside the penalty area. So they definitely did still like pepper Indy's goal, and Indy were just ruthlessly efficient, which I think has been kind of Sean McCauley's whole deal, is like, we're just going to take the chances that come. And that's now working, which is good. And I think Tulsa's offense is still like going to continue to produce at a pretty decent clip. So a little bit more, wind in Tulsa's sails there.
It's an interesting point relative to Indy. Like their two signature wins for me are this and away to Hartford. And that Hartford game was the exact same deal. They score within the first 10 minutes. They're playing a back four, which has been somewhat rare. And then they just bunker and absorb like 25 shots. It is not sustainable. But I think the fact that this Tulsa game, you saw them be a little bit more expressive offensively, that's something. And that's maybe why I'm buying in a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we've seen teams before especially once you get to the playoffs, like just do, I think the kids are calling it haram ball.
Well, we've talked Indy, we've talked Rhode Island. We've got one more Eastern bubble team to hit, because Tampa Bay was in action in a completely bizarre game at Loudoun. They were the worst team for most of this match, and they led 1-0 going into the 89th minute. And then all hell broke loose. Loudoun gets 2 goals. There's a penalty involved. Joey Skinner comes into the game and equalizes for the Rowdies. Ryan, in your preview article, you wisely pointed out that this one was going to be high scoring and recommended both teams to score. That was true. This was so open and so messy. What's the big takeaway from you from this one?
That I'm shocked that I needed to at least, I guess, clench and be nervous about that all the way up until the 96th minute to ensure that it hit. But no, like if you're looking at this from Tampa Bay's perspective, they've hit both teams to score and basically their last 4 games played, that this is kind of returning to the Rowdies team that you kind of remember for the past, that they're at least fun to watch and entertaining, kind of must-watch TV, if you will, that I'm just not yet ready to kind of give up on Tampa Bay's playoff chances. They're currently 5 points back at the moment in the Eastern Conference, but when you have Monterey Bay on the weekend and then Rhode Island, Hartford, and Detroit, 3 of those 4 games being at home, and we know how important it is to play at Al Lang Stadium, I'm not yet ready to write off the Rowdies at the moment.
I really thought when Loudoun scored in stoppage time that like justice would be done, because Loudoun deserved to win this game. And I say that as a Dom Casciato fan, self-described. So I think the reality here is that Loudoun deserved all 3 points, and the lads protocol stops for no one. And it does sometimes lead to, a Skinner banger in the dying embers of this game from Tampa Bay's 5th shot on target or whatever. So yeah, this was crazy. I think it highlights for me the like thing that I've just always said like about this particular version of Loudoun is that they just are always capable of conceding. Like they have all of the tools to maybe not do that, and they are going to give up chances, and it will be reliant on Faroux and company to just get in the way of them. and sometimes you don't. And so, yeah, justice was not served in Northern Virginia, but it isn't often these days. So,
Well, I mean, Loudon only has 4 clean sheets on the year, and they haven't had a clean sheet in a game that they've won since April 5th, which was against a very different Hartford Athletic team.
Yeah, and this was a game, by the way, where Bill Hamid, Juju Magic, whenever that guy gets back in Virginia, he was so good in goal for Tampa Bay and really kept them in this game. We got the comment from Soccer Night in Detroit pointing out there were 29 fouls and 9 yellows. That felt like a facet of the Tampa Bay strategy. Like they were getting under Loudon's skin, trying to halt the tempo. This game, when you throw in the added time, almost 120 minutes played, and Tampa Bay only completed about 200 passes. That's really low. Like, and they were very direct. They were very brutal in the way they were trying to operate. It almost worked out, and that's credit to Dom for going in and saying, we are not going to outpass Loudon, so we're going to out-brutalize them. It feels like Loudon probably deserved the 3 points, but if you're Tampa Bay, hey, getting a point, staying in the playoff mix, not going to be the worst outcome despite the context.
And this is why referees piss me off. And it's I hate talking about the refs, but in this specific way, this always seems to happen, which is the team that sets out with a strategy to foul, break up play, stop play is always the team that is either less punished in terms of bookings or equally punished as the other team. And in this case, like despite committing nearly double the fouls over the course of the game that Loudon did, Tampa Bay finishes with 5 yellows, Loudon with 4. And this is like, to me, referees are always doing this where they're evening things out or punishing the team who has more of the ball and all of that stuff because their fouls are happening more in transition than, Tampa Bay, who is just kicking the guy the second they get the ball and then jogging back as if it's FIFA 02 and the ref can't give you the card until they catch up with you or whatever. So anyways, that's my other last point is like Tampa Bay definitely should have been. This is the sort of thing that refs have more ability to rein in, like if they officiate it right, and oftentimes it ends up being level, which means that tactic works because you do effectively break a play. And if you're being punished at least at the same rate as the other team, then there's no incentive to stop. So, yeah.
If you want to see more whatever refereeing, go watch the final 5 minutes of the Phoenix-Oakland game where we got 2 reds. We almost got a coach fight happening. I don't know what was happening, but it was box office.
Crazy.
Love this league. Well, before we get into the conclusion here, any other stray USL thoughts from either of you?
The last thing I'll say in terms of justice not being served this past weekend, Hartford in Colorado Springs, switchbacks played incredibly, especially in the opening probably half hour. And some of the football they were playing was just beautiful. They were scything through Hartford up and down the pitch, creating tons of chances, forcing a bunch of amazing saves. And then Hartford get the craziest, jammiest, shittiest goal of all time of all 11 people are on their team are kicking the ball all at once in different directions and it somehow goes in the net. And then score a beautiful goal of their own, banger at the other end. But I think it shows one that obviously Hartford have a bit of a way of just finding results right now. And it's sort of the opposite of what we used to know about Hartford, which is when they can find a way to lose points, they will. In this case, they had absolutely no right to come away with a win out of Colorado Springs, and doing so is a credit to them. That being said, I do have a ton of sympathy for switchbacks because it was probably the best offensive football I've watched them play all season. And it gave them 0 goals, which is just it just is brutal that is how this sport works sometimes.
I was very worried that midfield was going to be too flimsy, but it controlled the game long enough that they should have been up 3-0. And that
Yeah.
relationship between Vassell and Hanya kind of streaking over the top, Hartford didn't have an answer for it. And
Yeah.
crazy that they ended up losing that game.
I just can't believe Vassell too, like with those chances to score and to really just like get, to get off to a flyer. Like, I think a similar thing for Loudon with Ordonez with like, you have these like new strikers coming in, whatever. And just like, they have this chance to really just like elevate where they're at and show that, hey, I'm back and all this stuff. And it just, for neither of them, they just didn't quite have that final touch. And Vassell will definitely be looking at a couple of these chances and be like, he was putting those away in his sleep in San Diego. And it was just a shame that he wasn't able to score for Colorado Springs because they deserved it.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, that's 3 losses in a row for Colorado Springs, all 3 of them coming at home, which is rather like nerve-wracking. Like they haven't lost 3 in a row since April 2024.
Well, and they're going to look back at Wednesday's game against New Mexico and feel the same way. They were on their throats for 20 minutes, didn't do enough to get a lead, and New Mexico comes back. It's a really tough situation for the defending champs right now. All right. Well, I will lead us off because we've got a comment calling out that, yes, I did indeed go see one battle after another and had a great time with it. I am looking to go again, much like William in the comments here. So because some friends were in Brooklyn and they have a membership at a local art theater and we're like, hey, we have to see it here because I get a discount. Terrible audio, kind of like you get whatever's happening in the other theater coming in, clashing. So I am excited to try and see it in VistaVision, which the last time a movie was released kind of nationally in VistaVision was the 60s. There are only 4 movie theaters in America that show it in this format. I happen to live 2 blocks away from one of them. The tickets have been sold out because movie nerds are like that. But yeah, fired up to be going out and getting there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I know we had talked about it last Friday in our own personal DMs, but I did finally get that Letterboxd account. I felt like less of, I guess, film person when like my most watched actor was Samuel L. Jackson. I was just like, wait, and I was just like, why? And I was like, oh wait, Marvel, yeah. But at least luckily, like Wes Anderson was my top director, at least rated. So I'm at least feeling good about that one. So yeah, if you are thinking about a Letterboxd, I guess, Pro subscription for 6 cents a day, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, as someone who's addicted to stats, obviously, like that's something I can't say no to.
So that's something you're interested
in. By the
in?
way, shout out to the many USL broadcasts that are like using my playoff odds model. I don't claim that it's great, but yeah, love that.
Hey, like any good consultant, John, it doesn't matter if you think the model is great. It just matters that they think it's great. So,
Greg Straw, Joe Malfa, love you guys.
Yeah, no, that is awesome though. And well deserved. I mean, like,
thank you.
Who else is doing it like John? Nobody.
For better or worse.
That's it. Yeah. I had a very different. I have 2 things, and I'm mostly trying to catch up here because I haven't been here for a little bit. So part of the reason that I wasn't here a couple of weeks ago was I was in Vegas for work, which is objectively the worst reason to be in Vegas. And
I'm going to a Lights game, but yeah.
I wanted so bad too to make the pilgrimage to Cashman, but it just wasn't possible in the they weren't playing a lunchtime game. They weren't playing a lunchtime Wednesday game, and I was there Monday to Wednesday. So but I was able to make it to, they are constructing the grandstands for the Formula One race that'll be in Vegas in November. But they have the permanent like paddock building with the garages and the pit lane and all that stuff that is always there. And so me and a coworker of mine who is also a Formula One fan, like we went down and did the karting and sim rigs that they have down at the Vegas paddock. And it was a lot of fun, nerded out. in the karting, I qualified 7th and finished 5th. So, moved up a couple of places, some good points for the team, good solid points. But no, aside from that, so that was like the, part of the reason that I've just been like traveling a lot for work. And even today I was in Lansing, Michigan, and just kind of been all over the place. The my recent movie experience is the least filmy or film nerd movie experience, because we attempted to take my daughter to the movies for the first time of her life, and that is because a recent film release, Gabby's Dollhouse.
Let's go.
She is obsessed with Gabby's Dollhouse, loves Gabby's Dollhouse, is like constantly watching Gabby's Dollhouse. She's singing the songs at bedtime. She's just like all about it. She brought her like stuff, her little stuffies of, she has like Pandy and Mercat that she brought to the movie theater, like for the movie. She was very excited. We sit down, she's like taking it all in, whatever. The movie begins and everything's going great. She loves that there's Gabby. She loves that the characters from the show are in it. And then, for those who don't know, the villain of the movie is played by Kristen Wiig of SNL fame. And she plays this specifically like Cruella de Vil sort of villain, who is supposed to be this very fashionable woman who, and there's also like a Toy Story and Barbie thing going on of like, she used to play with her cat toy, like her cat dolls, and doesn't anymore because she became a cynical businesswoman who runs a kitty litter empire or whatever. She appeared on screen and Corinne was like, no. And I was like, what? Like, what's wrong? And she's like, we have to go. like, what's wrong? She's like, no, I don't like this. I don't like this. Whatever. She was terrified of Kristen Wiig, which I was like, oh no, we've somehow traumatized our child with one of the funniest comedic actors of my generation, right? Like someone that I grew up like just laughing at so much of her work. And so the idea that my daughter is scared of her in a movie about cat dolls that come to life in a dollhouse and a girl who can go into the dollhouse, whatever. So we left. We had to leave. She was like not having it. She was like, I don't know. I can't watch this. Like, whatever. She was just like not having it. So we left. Like 18 minutes into the Gabby's Dollhouse movie, she had enough. And it wasn't for critical reasons, aside from, I guess, like, you shouldn't have cast Kristen Wiig. That was essentially can't explain it still too. She was like, I don't like the lady. So
wonderful the mind of a child is.
Yeah.
My first movie memory, and I'm sure there were earlier things, but it was begging to go see Spider-Man 3 when I was a little bit too young for that. And sure enough, when there's the Venom part of the movie, I was too young to handle that. Very upset. Made us walk out because I was too scared.
I was gonna say Tobey Maguire dancing,
right?
Was that would have been the straw that broke the camel's back.
I guess my first ever movie memory, or at least the one that I could remember, was the SpongeBob movie in 2004. Like, I was like a really big fan of it. Like, I went to, like, I had my dad, like, when we lived in Ohio, like, drive us down to Charlotte. As funny enough, since I live here, we went to a NASCAR race that had a SpongeBob car sponsor at the race just to see it. And my dad took me to see the movie, and I was very appreciative of it because he's only seen one movie in movie theaters since 2004.
That's unreal.
He's only seen 3 movies since Titanic, and it was Titanic, wow, SpongeBob, and The Force Awakens. That's been like the only 3 films he's seen in theaters randomly.
That is a crazy spread.
That rules. That SpongeBob movie taught a generation of people my age to respect David Hasselhoff.
Yeah.
True.
It's my big memory. Well, we are so far off base from where we started here, but thank you to the people who stuck it out, listened to us talk about Gabby's Dollhouse. We will be back going through all things USL next Tuesday, hopefully with Kaylor involved. But until then, we will see you soon.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.